Hello, and welcome to Doctor Who 50 Years Ago, the show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1967 and looks at the differences between then and now. This week, episode 2 of the Macra Terror, that story about paranoia and crabs, but we're not too crabby about it, or so I think. I am Ben.
I am Luke.
And I'm Nick.
And here we are, and here we go into the news from 1967. Very usefully about an episode about student uprisings. There are a lot of student uprisings. On Tuesday the 14th of March, a group of 100,000 students marched through the streets of Beijing, protesting the February adverse current, which had seen the Chinese army reclaim control of cities taken over by the Red Guards. Various high-ups in the Chinese Communist Party were the targets of the demonstration. Here is the clash of two ideals between the young students, some Maoists, and some other people. It's all very weird in China.
The government is starting to, or
is attempting to reclaim control. Yeah,
are starting to reclaim the country from the people, like the fervent Maoists who have been whipped up by the chairman.
Yeah, the end is not in sight, though. This is going to go on for at least another 3 years. It's more of a counter-revolution, one of a series of counter-revolutions, which eventually led to the hip-hop song You Spin Me Right Round.
Wait, really?
No.
Alright, cut the wait, really, then.
Absolutely not. On Friday the 17th of March, the Declaration on the Croatian Language was issued by a group of prominent intellectuals in Yugoslavia, which marked the beginning of a movement referred to as the Croatian Spring, a very nice fountain, a quest for the autonomous Croatian state within the Yugoslavian Federation. As a result of this, academic jobs were lost and people were expelled from the ruling League of Communists in Yugoslavia. Eastern Europe is not happy.
We all know how this ended up. I mean, it takes about 30 more years after this, or 25 more years, I should say.
Yes, it's a case of the Hungarians did this in 1956, and it didn't end well.
Well, this is more to do with ethnic tensions rather than just desire for freedom in general.
Yes.
Didn't like the fact it wasn't a federation of equal ethnicities. It was a country ruled by Serbia, basically.
It's the continuation of ethnic troubles which have plagued that area since the beginning of the 20th century, at the very least.
Yes, and so the reason that this would have been clamped down on is during the Second World War, Croatia was given a large territory and was a Nazi puppet, effectively, and conducted a lot of terrible deeds as they were working with the Nazis. But so I suspect that the Serbians didn't want that to occur again, or to let the Croatians
and
have it. And of course, if they give some devolution out to the Croatians, then the Macedonians, the Albanians, the Bosnians, the Slovenians are all going to clamour for more freedom as well, and then that's just going to break apart the country.
Yes, the Yugoslavia is a continuation of the hectic status that the Austro-Hungarian Empire had, and so on and so forth down the ages in history. It's a veritable mess, and it continues to be so until fairly recently, in fact.
Yeah.
Such was the fun 50 years ago. And finally, on Saturday the 18th of March, the supertanker Torrey Canyon ran aground on Pollard's Rock between the Cornish mainland and the Isles of Scilly. 30,000 tonnes of oil was initially released, leading to 32 million gallons of oil washing up on the Cornish coast. It isn't an uprising by the people, more of a minor ecological disaster.
Is this one of the worst oil spills in this country?
I would have said it was pretty bad. Yeah, because all the others I can think of is storms on the English Channel and masses of ships being run aground.
Okay, so I guess this probably would have fueled relatively early environmental concerns. People starting to realise the environment is important and worth protecting. The effects that oil has on the environment as well. You know, probably seeing images of birds covered in oil slick. Things like that.
It's enough to show the young generation that things aren't so pretty and nice.
Yeah, here's a chance for the hippies to kind of like not only be anti-war but also be pro-environment.
A tenuous link to the themes of this episode. That is the entire aim of the news from 50 years ago, and that was the news. And now we shall get into episode 2 of the Macra Terror. Luke.
I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Yippee doodle.
What a surprise.
I love this as much as the first. Perhaps more. Perhaps as much. I'm not sure. I love it, basically.
I think it's nearly as good as the first episode. Not quite as much happens, but what does happen is dripping in atmosphere, and I definitely was interested by it, and I think this episode was not as badly affected as the first without having the visuals. Otherwise, it's quite a talky one, this.
I'm having trouble with it. I again, like the first episode, I absolutely love the premise. This has the ability to be perhaps the most perfect episode of Doctor Who, as Luke deifies it. But it has issues. It's so difficult to grapple with as a viewer because of the lack of visual content in some cases. It feels padded. It might be absolutely perfect, again, on the visual medium. But watching it as a loose cannon reconstruction, there are long pauses which make it slightly difficult to grab hold of. The whole hypnotism ideal is lovely, absolutely lovely. But, again, it feels padded. Like the issue we had with Medoc and the Doctor last episode, it kept going back to it. Whereas it could have been tighter paced, in my opinion. This is just healthy criticism to it, because I badly want this episode to be perfect. And, if anything, it's even more perfect because it has flaws.
You are going to learn that this is, in fact, a genius script made by a genius that only geniuses will understand.
That never wrote for Doctor Who again.
And then went on to make a series called Star Maidens, which
is
sucked.
this guy?
Yes, he's the guy who did Star Maidens, which sucked.
Yeah, we watched episode 1 of that, and that was enough.
John Lucarotti and Ian Stewart Black think they know what feminism is.
Oh my.
Yes.
You can stop right there.
It's as good as well, when I say good, I mean bad as you think it is.
Okay then. So, enough of the writing troubles in the future, let's move to the present, which is, of course, 50 years ago, with the Macra Terror episode 2. Following on from the cliffhanger, the Doctor and Medoc see a scary creature in a flurry of Dudley Simpson music. They get caught by guards, they ignore the Doctor's opinion that they've seen Macra, and take him to see the pilot. A very good line, and I pointed out here, reason's the last thing a man like Ola would listen to. And then the pilot dictates to a female secretary like an arse.
Rather than the chief or commander, he's a pilot. He's the one who's supposed to be steering the colony. Yet the colony is based on staying in the same place, on being as stale as possible. Rather than steering them somewhere, he's grounding them and keeping them still. It's this brilliant little subtle inversion of things.
I see. And on top of the nautical reference, if you rearrange the letters a bit in pilot and add a few and lose a few, you also get puppet. I guess that's also part of its meaning.
Yeah.
He's not the leader because, or he's not called the leader because he isn't the leader. And when I say that, I mean in terms of we the audience know that there's the Macra, so it just further reiterates that someone else is controlling him.
The Doctor talks to Pilot in his office, and the former looks at a telescopic viewing machine, the height of technology, the Doctor being a buffoon, which is part of his character, but in reality he's in control of the situation. He tries to help Medoc, but Medoc spares him from any punishment, allowing him to investigate further and avoid correction.
The pilot here is quite stupid. Medoc says, "Oh, he didn't help. He was trying to capture me," and he just sort of accepts it. I don't know. This feels very 60s sci-fi logic to me.
I guess it's a good setup towards the whole hypnotic suggestion second half of the episode. The fact that their wills are subverted. And,
okay, I guess I'll say then it's actually quite clever, even though initially it seems really stupid.
You know what's even cleverer form of wordplay? Indoctrinated.
Speaking of Doctor-inated, he goes to a hospital for correction. Not only does that avoid any obvious punishment connotations, but it's also showing how any differences are considered sort of mental illnesses. Any form of dissidence is considered a mental illness. That Homosexuals TV show we looked at last week on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they both show that dissidence is considered to be just something wrong with your head that needs to be corrected through medication and care. We see later in this episode the Controller is actually quite sad that Medoc cannot be made healthy again, and the colony believing in healthy correctness, as we'll see in a moment. It shows that believing in the state is considered sanity and healthy.
Which is, of course, a stark contrast to the Doctor's character of being an anti-authoritarian, almost anarchical force, chaotic force, rather.
The Doctor, despite his best efforts, can't be a dissident here. The pilot immediately believes Medoc, and he says, "Oh, Doctor, you're a hero again." This is the second time the Doctor said, no, punish me, and they just refuse to. In this season, we've had so many times that the Doctor's been blamed for what's going on. Here, he's trying to be that dissident, but the colony is not letting him.
It's an interesting inversion. The colony is said to believe in healthy happiness, sometimes through force, which is a lovely mantra. The Controller decides to integrate the TARDIS I'll start that again. The Controller decides to integrate the TARDIS crew with mind control to stop criticism against Macra. For as we know, there are no such things as Macra, screams the Controller.
There is no such things as Macra!
Thank you. It's a bit of a heavy-handed way of doing it. Immediately screaming fanatical idea rather than the quiet, paranoid, no such things as Macra, no such things as Macra, that sort of madness.
What we'll see throughout this episode is that the Controller, he doesn't have to hide his evilness to Pilot, because Pilot has been made so broken by the hypnotism, as we'll see in Ben later, that the Controller and the Macra puppet can just go evil. He can go fanatic.
Right.
It's that confidence in his mind control, and it's warranted confidence, which is also terrifying. Control must be believed and obeyed. He's saying, "We don't care about what strangers think." That's one of the quotes from Ola. We cannot have criticism from strangers. He just goes on this outburst of hate when something's challenged. He wants to crush it, and he will crush it with a velvet glove.
And so Ben and Polly are hypnotised to believe that the colony is perfection itself, and to behave, and to conform, and to work, and to not question. Jamie escapes the suggestive comments and sees that Ben's been taking over before sleeping. Again. It's a pretty long scene. The Doctor finds the sleeping quarters rigged and stops Polly from being obedient with some kind of counter-hypnotic suggestion, but fails to get to Ben in time. And another line that I'd like to quote, "Better some damage than the loss of willpower."
I found this scene very creepy and atmospheric. the voice was really, ooh, and it sent shivers down your spine sort of thing. And also, Jamie finally differentiates himself from Ben. Other than the fact he's got a different background, whatever, he sort of performed the same role and has had almost the same lines, pretty much. But now, finally, Jamie is doing something other than Ben.
Instances of divide and conquer are actually proving well for Jamie's characterization.
Yeah, and I think it makes more sense that Jamie is the one that is unaffected, or at least doesn't get taken over by the indoctrination, because he's from the past, and so technology and whatever is a lot more kind of, don't like it to him.
Ben is really overusing his slang. He says the word nosh to Jamie. We're hearing this in his own words. He's not being given phrases which he's reciting. This has gotten into its brain, and it's speaking
into his personality.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's what's so chilling.
It's a very effective piece of writing.
And acting.
Ben turns on the rest of the crew that next morning even, fully taken over, and tries to turn in the doctor for criminal damage. They resist against Ben's informancy, but violence will get you nowhere, so Ben escapes to be an informant, and the doctor is taken in. My question here is this: why is Polly so weak and feeble?
Well, other than that's just how they wrote women back then, I would say also she's very good friends with Ben at this point. They both sort of shared all their adventures so far, and the fact that he's suddenly acting in such an alien way almost, it would be terrifying.
It's more the shock of the sudden change.
Yeah, he's suddenly not acting anything like himself. The violence will get you nowhere line by the Doctor is really good again. It's because even then, I don't even think I could imagine Hartnell uttering that line. Second Doctor is here being a lot more pacifistic, although he isn't averse to violence, but it's normally in an indirect way when there are no other options available to him.
Yes, or rather he makes it seem that it's indirect.
Yeah.
You can't dissuade me from telling me he destroyed Atlantis.
Yeah. So I think he's being a very good role model to the
younger generation.
Young boys especially that are watching this, I think, because a male role model that doesn't exist for violence. He doesn't sort things out in a violent way, and that's quite a rarity in media in the 60s and now.
Yeah, it was perfect for that time. And as for women, well, they're just going to have to wait for Zoe.
Yeah. But I mean, even now, the Doctor is still a very good role model for young boys as well, because violence, if anything, is even more prolific in the media, and the Doctor is actually not that violent. He's not a big masculine character, the Doctor.
It's brains rather than brawn is the term I think you're trying to get to.
But he is not
use of intellect.
Yeah, but he is not a masculine character at all. And he's quite neutral, I suppose, but he is very much brains and brawn.
Even as the War Doctor. In the correction centre, Medoc is subject to intense hypnotic suggestion, to no avail. They suggest to send him to the pits for life, which I think there's a subtle reference there somewhere. Ben and Polly have a 2-second argument, and she rushes off with Ben in tow to the construction site, which is where the Macra are. Ben can't see them and can't understand them because of the indoctrination. And then they grapple with a rather immobile Macra and to escape into some more Macra. It's quite a long scene.
What I love about the correction centre scene is how sad the pilot sounds when he's saying he'll never be happy like the rest of us. Seeing someone who genuinely believes that this is a fulfilling life just after we've seen it completely destroy our friend Ben is so scary.
It's anti-plurality, yeah.
The way Ben stalks Polly, the way that this is in a way very elongated and in its own little way slightly generic, builds up how wrong Ben is at the moment. He's acting like a traditional villain. We have this incredibly quiet Dudley-less chase scene where all we can hear is Polly like moaning in fear and Ben speaking like this mad villain.
Yeah.
And it's building up the tension in the scene so that we sort of get how horrible the Macra are, so that when we see them, even though they do look cheap and terrible, yes, there's a real sense of fear behind them because that's what they've done.
At the point it comes down to the visual parts, the acting, and it's performed effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like Michael Craze, he's brilliant in this episode, I think.
He's given us a new tone to Ben, which it's kind of hard to discern. This was Ben a few moments ago, and now it's something completely different.
Yeah, and as you say, like the way he speaks, I really picked up on it. It was really creepy, and this whole scene where then Polly's like, "I can see this thing right in front of me," and Ben's like, "No, it's not there." This sort of touches on a concept that's quite a big deal at the moment in the present day. This concept called gaslighting. It comes from this film that was made in the 30s, I think, called Gaslight, where the husband of this of the main character would dim the lights as he was I can't remember exactly why, but he would dim the lights and then claim that didn't happen and that it was her imagination, things like that, and just manipulate her, but
mental manipulation.
Tell her that reality was different to how she was perceiving it. The most terrifying thing, if you're in Polly's shoes, are you're seeing these terrifying things, and yet you're being told by someone that you know and trust that it's not real. That's a terrifying kind of concept.
A form of mental torture, right? Okay.
Yes.
The Doctor is proud of his sabotage and says so to the pilot, who is also controlled. Polly reports about Macra, and Ben denies her story. Some gaslighting for you. The pilot is forced to show the controller, who denies such allegations. He's a bit like the Justice Department right now. The Doctor and Jamie then force him to see the real controller in person, who is bedraggled and old, and tries to give orders to believe and obey, but is being shouted at by somebody else. Something with a claw. And as Polly rightly screams, they're in control.
Rather than be constantly doubted by those in the colony, the Doctor, despite his best efforts, is constantly loved by the colony earlier in the episode. He keeps trying to be this disobedient figure, but the colony he hates, they love him. They hail him as this hero. He wants them to hate him. He wants to sow that discord, but everyone is oblivious. He can't be disobedient, as he tells Polly later. Don't be disobedient. Make up your own mind. He's always trying to get them riled up. And he's so proud of his sabotage. And that's what's so good. One of the scariest bits of 1984 was that repression of emotions that everyone was feeling. It's like watching the Doctor come in to poke everyone with a stick saying, "Don't you remember who you were?" By making them angry, he's allowing them to realize that humanity, that's his idea. The moon base and the 10th planet were about people destroying their humanity. They were doing it physically, but this is mentally, and they're powerless to stop it. It's so good to watch this next to the other Cyberman stories, because those ones were about people losing their humanity, but this is an ideological battle. This is just so scary as an ending, because these people have become so lost that the controller just says, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's see my real form." This is such an emotionally charged, drawn-out cliffhanger that the controller, as you see him, he's underplaying it so much. You can hear these long pauses where he's sobbing, and he finally resists a little, but he's just taken away. It's such an out-of-place, emotionally charged cliffhanger. We know how evil they are. They know how evil they are, and we know we have to fight it. Amazing.
Goodness me, and all against a authoritarian state, the ideas of mental gaslighting. Yeah. Whew.
Luke's really said everything that needs to be said. You know, I'll let him have his moment in the sun.
Once again, he is persuading us that the Macra has beautiful points, that it is probably a visual masterpiece, and in my view, that doesn't actually increase its chances of it being animated. If anything, it makes its chances worse, because it's such a difficult thing to visualize, I'd argue.
Yeah, it would be difficult to animate this in a way which really lives up to what we see on screen.
Like Power of the Daleks.
Yeah. If they did what they did with the moon base, maybe it could work. But the thing is, seeing a giant crab on a cartoon, it would probably feel too cartoony to really have a punch to it.
It needs the mood lighting that appears to exist in the surviving footage.
Yes.
The Macra is all down to visual stimulus, but we can at least grasp the basic concepts of this story, and those are, as I will repeat, the idea of mental gaslighting, the idea of a authoritarian state controlling its inhabitants mentally through paranoia, delusions of grandeur, the idea of a perfect state when in fact it's pretty miserable, and behind it some shadowy force which just happens to be a giant crab.
Mm.
All these things you can get in an episode of Doctor Who. Magnificent. You have convinced me a bit more, yes. And I suppose
I liked it.
that is your aim, yeah. On reflection, it makes more sense now that we've had tons of critical analysis, yes, poured onto it. That is the essence of Doctor Who 50 years ago. Thank you very much for watching. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes. Leave positive comments there, it helps. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube, where you can like, comment and subscribe, and Google Plus if you dare. We shall be back next week with episode 3 of the Macra, maybe another essay-long piece of critical analysis. Who knows? Until then, I have been Ben.
I have been Luke.
And I've been Nick.
Thank you, and goodbye.